Good evening. You're very welcome to tonight's webinar, Countdown to Breeding, where we will be discussing how to maximise the success of your breeding season. I'm Stuart, dairy specialist in Teagasc Moor Park and co-host of the Dairy Edge podcast, and I'm your host for this evening's webinar. A successful breeding season increases the number of cows calved early in the season, which drives productivity through increased days in milk and improves subsequent breeding performance by virtue of greater time available to cows to recover ahead of the next breeding season. It needs constant work to be maintained, but it gets easier as you get better at it. Joining me in studio tonight to discuss tonight's topic are Professor Stephen Butler, Head of the Reproductive Physiology Department in Teagasc Moor Park, Dr. Doreen, CEO of the National Cattle Breeding Centre, and to tell us how he puts it all into practice is Kieran Condon, dairy farmer based in Kells, County Kilkenny. Please note, this webinar is being recorded. We are taking questions throughout the broadcast through the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and we encourage you to ask questions throughout the show. We will endeavour to get through as many of them as possible. First up, I'm joined by Stephen Butler, who is going to give a presentation on successful synchronisation. Over to you, Stephen.
Okay, great. Thanks, Stuart. Good evening. So tonight I want to have a talk here titled Maximising Success with Sex Semen. I want to start by acknowledging my co-authors on this. So Stephanie Stanley is a postgraduate student in Moor Park, done a lot of work on this. And also Ross Evans from ICBF, which is a source of the data I'm going to be sharing with you. And Sean Fair, who's the coordinator of a DAFM-funded project called HeteroBull. So first of all, what do the recent trends in sex semen usage in Ireland look like? So we've had really sudden and marked increase in the usage of sex semen in Ireland in the last few years. It's increased by almost 400% relative to where we were in 2021. So this is a really rapid growth, and the opportunity now exists to understand a little bit better what's going on at a herd level in terms of pregnancy rates achieved with sex semen compared with conventional in Irish dairy herds. So what did we do in this most recent study that we're undertaking at the moment? So we retrieved some data from the ICBF database from both maiden heifers and lactating cows, and we have data available, pregnancy information available for animals inseminated with conventional dairy semen, sex dairy semen, and conventional beef semen. We have information from 2022, 23, and 24 breeding seasons. And each year we have service information, pregnancy diagnosis information, and importantly, the pregnancy diagnosis data that's backed up by calving event records. We had to undertake a fair amount of data cleaning before this data was ready for analysis. So we restricted it to spring calving herds only. We restricted it to animals that had complete information for their records. So all of their information related to genetics, service information, pregnancy diagnosis information, calving information, and also herds, and even within the herds, the bulls that had sufficient numbers of inseminations conducted. We then conducted statistical analysis on this, and what I'm going to be showing you tonight is primarily the adjusted models. So when farmers select their dams for sex semen, they're probably selecting the better heifers, the better fertility cows, and that's adjusted for in the data I'm going to be sharing with you here tonight. So first up here is an overview of what's happened with the dairy heifers. This is pregnancy per AI at first service. And you can see data here for 2022, 2023, and 2024. So the inseminations with conventional semen are indicated in blue, and the inseminations with sex semen are indicated in pink. And you can see that, okay, fair enough, every year the conventional semen is a little bit better than the sex semen, but the gap is relatively consistent and relatively small. And when we look at the relative pregnancy rates, across all 3 years, you're looking at a figure of roughly 90 or slightly over 90% relative pregnancy rate for the sex semen inseminations. Now, that's the overall mean across all herds. And what I'm showing you here is trying to delve a little bit further into the variation that existed between herds. So what you're seeing here is the full spread of data. So on the vertical axis is the mean herd pregnancy per AI. So think of a herd that had 30 heifers, and if 15 went in calf to the first service, they would be on that 50% line. So 15 out of 30 is exactly 50%. So they would be represented by one dot on that 50% line. So the blue dots here are for herds that were doing DIY AI, and the red dots are for herds that were doing AI technician service. And of course, we have some herds that are doing a combination of both. You know, they're probably predominantly DIY with some relief inseminations from a technician service. So when you look at 2022, 2023, or 2024, we're seeing a very similar spread between years. You can see that most of the data is in here in this red box. Most of the herds are having a mean herd pregnancy rate in their heifers ranging somewhere from 40 to 75%. There's going to be some herds here that are having really poor performance. So these are all herds that are having 30% or less pregnancy per AI at first service in their heifers. But equally, there's some herds up here at the very top where they're having some excellent fertility performance in their heifers. So these are all 80% or greater pregnancy to first service in their heifers. Now the data here is a combination of sex and conventional across all of the herds. So using the information that we have here on each individual herd, we have all of their insemination dates. We're able to delve in a little bit and determine whether or not those herds were using fixed time AI. So fixed time AI would stand out because generally all of the inseminations for that herd on the heifers are conducted on a single day. We can also identify herds that are doing some other type of sync. So those would be herds that are maybe breeding for 6 or 7 days, and then suddenly there's a big spike in the number of animals inseminated per day. So most of this other synchrony would be herds that are doing a simple prostaglandin-based approach. And then we can also identify herds that are seemingly doing no synchrony at all. So there's roughly the same number of heifers being inseminated every day. There is no evident spike in the number of inseminations per day. So we did this for 2022, 2023, and 2024, and the herds that were doing fixed time AI, the pregnancy per AI for those herds are indicated in the pink bars. And you can see that every year those herds are on average performing the poorest. Now that is not unexpected. Around the world it is known that fixed time AI in heifers is going to give you slightly poorer pregnancy rates compared with animals that are bred after a natural heat or a spontaneous heat event. The animals with no synchrony are indicated in blue, so they are, numerically at least, the best performing animals every year. But you have to bear in mind that that requires at least 21 days of heat detection and bringing those animals in for AI to achieve that level of performance. So it takes 21 days at least to attain maximum submission for those animals, whereas the pink bar is, you know, those animals are all inseminated on a single day. So your submission side is much better for that group of animals. And the herds that they were doing other sync, which is primarily a single injection of prostaglandin, you know, they're very close to the animals where there was no synchrony employed. And again, that is consistent with what we would have expected from other studies that have been conducted in the past. When we look at the herd level performance for these different breeding methods, you can see here the blue dots in this case indicate the herds that are doing fixed time AI. The red dots indicate the herds that are employing some other type of synchrony, and the green dots are the herds that are using no synchrony. And we have the information here for 2022, 2023, and 2024. And again, you can see that for all of these different breeding methods, there is a wide range in performance. And again, most of these herds are in that 40 to 75% range for pregnancy rate. But you can also see that there are some herds performing poorer than this, and you can see there's some herds performing better than this. Note in particular that there are some herds where the pregnancy per AI is particularly poor. You know, it's under that 30% mark, and that is most evident for the herds that are doing fixed time AI, and less evident for the herds that are employing no synchrony. And again, that makes sense. Fixed time AI ends with the animals being inseminated, and that does not always guarantee that you're getting an ovulation event. Whereas the animals with no synchrony, they're only being inseminated if they display estrus. So everything has to be working right for those animals before they get inseminated. If we break this apart further, and on the left here now I'm showing you the data for the animals that were using conventional semen only, or sorry, the herds that were using conventional semen only, or primarily conventional semen. And on the right, the data is broken down to show you just the herds that were using sex semen only or primarily sex semen. So in each case here, it's at least 90% conventional semen on the left and at least 90% conventional or sex semen on the right. And again, you can see there's a big range here, there's a big spread in performance, but there's a spread in performance regardless of the breeding method, whether it's fixed time AI, other synchrony method or no synchrony, we're seeing a roughly similar range in performance across time. And again, I would highlight here that in both of these cases, most of the data is in that 40 to 75% range, and there is no, it's not that it's particularly poor for fixed time AI and it's much better for animals that aren't synchronized. There's an equal spread in all of these different breeding methods. So another thing we've tried to do here is try and determine what's going on at a herd level across years. So the question here is, if a herd is really good, if achieving really good fertility performance in the heifers, how likely are they to achieve that again? Or how likely are they to become a poor performing herd? So on the left here, we've got the fertility performance in 2022, and Q1 would be the animals in the top quartile, or the top 25%, or the best 25%, and Q4 would be the herds with the poorest fertility performance overall at a mean herd level. So if they're the best performance in 2022, that's the blue line, you can see that a significant proportion of them stay in the top quartile, quartile 1 in 2023, and stay in that top quartile in 2024. Equally, you can see that some of those blue lines will delve down into quartile 2 or 3 or even all the way down to 4. So it is possible to be a really top performing herd and in the space of 1 year have pretty poor performance for fertility in the heifers. Equally, on a different side, if the herd starts in Q4, so that's the quartile of herds with the poorest performance, again, a lot of them will be the poorest performing herds in 2023, and a lot of them were the poorest performing herds in 2024. But equally, a lot of them had significant gains in 1 year as well. So as you go from 2022, you can see some of these are moving up to quartile 3, quartile 2, and even up to quartile 1. So there's something going on here in herds where they're able to sustain excellent fertility performance in heifers year on year, and unless there's also a risk here that management or some changes in their protocols will cause those heifers to deteriorate in performance the following year. On a positive note, herds that have poor performance in the space of a year can really improve their performance as well. So what's important here for reproductive management? How can herds maximize their chance of success with sex-sorted semen? So, when we think about our heifers in seasonal calving systems, they're really on the clock. So the first calving is going to occur at 22 to 24 months of age. That means they need to be pregnant by 13 to 15 months, which means that they should be pubertal by 10 to 12 months of age. And what really drives this is achieving target weights at housing, at turnout, and at mating start date. We do recommend use of synchrony to concentrate breeding to maximize submission, get those animals bred early. The most common protocol would be prostaglandin. So breed for 7 days, prostaglandin on day 7, and then you're talking about around 10 days of heat detection and AI. Fixed time AI will achieve 100% submission on mating start date. It allows a concentrated period of repeat heats as well that centers around day 21. So in terms of calving pattern, fixed time AI has a benefit of maximizing submission early and getting more animals pregnant by day 21. Both of these strategies can be used to incorporate sex-sorted semen. And the important thing here are target weight, cycling regularly before the breeding season, and you need to be somewhat selective here in terms of selecting the animals for sex semen. So in particular, you're looking for animals that have a strong heat response to synchronization. And if there's a question mark about a heat event, maybe that's an animal that's going to be better off being served to beef straw and keep the sex semen straws for other animals that are likely to achieve conception. So I'm sure everyone has seen a slide or a version of this slide before, but we're talking about the target weights here, and the only one that matters now is the target weight at breeding. And typically we talk about at 15 months of age, 60% of mature body weight, and you can see a figure here of 345 kilos. So that's about 3, 4, 5 weeks away from most herds, and the question is, how many of the heifers in the herd are at that weight, or will be at that weight by the time the breeding season starts? And if they're not at that weight, it has implications for when did they achieve puberty, how many cycles they've had, and also their likelihood of conception when the breeding season starts. Just a quick piece of information on the lactating cows. So obviously lactating cows, there's a lot more beef semen being used as a result of sex semen. So we have information here for conventional beef AI, conventional dairy AI, and also sex-sorted dairy AI. And again, you can see that sex-sorted dairy is poorer in terms of pregnancy per AI. In terms of relative performance, it's in the the high 80s in terms of how the fertility of sex-sorted semen relative to conventional, but yet there's also big variation between herds in what they're achieving there. So on this graphic here, what you see is the difference between conventional versus sexed on herds that are using both. So lots of herds are using some sexed and also some conventional dairy within a single breeding season. And the red line here is what's indicating equal performance. And if they're above the line, that means on average that herd achieved better results with conventional semen than sex-sorted semen. And if they're below that red line, they achieve better performance with sex-sorted semen compared to conventional semen. Now, obviously, most of these dots are above the red line, but there are a significant number of dots below the red line. So there are herds that are doing as well as or slightly better with sex-sorted semen compared to their performance with conventional semen. So that there's management tactics here and things that can be improved, things that can be utilized to improve the performance with sex-sorted semen. So last slide then, allocation and use of sex semen, how to try and maximize the chance of success. So the heifers should be the first port of call. These are generally going to be in the top 50% of the herd for EBI. They should be at target weight, cycling regularly, and be showing strong heats on the day of AI. If they're not doing that, then they're not good candidates for sex-sorted semen. The cows, again, you're selecting the cows within the lactating herd that are in the top 50% of the herd for EBI. Select the younger cows, parity 1 to 4. Select the early calving cows, so in particular January, February calvers. They should be at least 50 days in milk when they're being bred. Condition score greater than 3. They should be cycling regularly after calving. No health problems after calving. This is a really important one. Weed out those cows that have problems. And again, you're only using sex semen on those animals that are having strong heats. The bulls, use a bull team that's appropriate to the herd size, and you'll get advice from ICBF on how many bulls you should be using for your herd size. This is really important. It mitigates the genetic risk that EBI will go down or potentially go up, but it mitigates that risk of EBI going down for individual bulls, but it also mitigates the risk of fertility, poor fertility from an individual bull. So not putting too much faith in any one bull. And then on the day of insemination, only use sex on those animals that are really showing strong heats and you're very confident that they're truly in estrus. The timing of AI is critical, so based on detected estrus, 14 to 20 hours after animals first come onto heat. And of course, straw handling is really critical with sex-sorted semen. So with conventional semen, you can get away with a lot, but the thawing temperature, thawing time from thawing to insemination is really critical for sex-sorted straws. Okay, thanks for that, and I'm back over to you, Stuart.
Thanks, Stephen, for that excellent presentation. So can you please join both Doreen and myself here at the desk, and we will just, while we're coming back over here, there's some mixed feedback, I suppose, from people in relation to the fixed time. And I suppose your data shows that that's actually across all the scenarios there. So, and you've also shown that there's people who are very good in 1 year going poor and maybe coming back into good as well. And that's a source of frustration for people. So can you address that as to what are the sources of that? Because there's a lot of feedback that we're getting through the advisors that people are thinking of not doing fixed time AI because of disappointment with it. Obviously, if they've gone from being bad and they've gone good, they're happy to go doing it again this year. But if they've gone the other way, they're a little less inclined to do it. What are the potential causes of that? Like you've talked about, you've shown the data there, but what are the actual risks that people may need to be more aware of? And I suppose I also wonder, is your first slide showed the increase in the numbers of sex semen being used. Is that a potential issue with it as well, in that there's now more of it being used, and maybe is the care around it that we would have been advising as significant as it would have been in the past, maybe?
Yeah, so those are all good questions. So there has been a big increase in sex semen. A lot of that is targeted at heifers, and a lot of that growth in heifers has been through the use of fixed time AI. So certainly farmers are taking up that use of that tool. And if it doesn't go well, of course, they're seeing it straight away. And it's understandable. It's a big cost, right? So sex semen is expensive, synchrony is expensive, and if it doesn't go right, it's a big financial hit. Fixed time AI does what it says in the tin. At the end of this, they get inseminated. So that does not mean that every animal is actually suitable for it, right? So there's targets here in terms of weight we've talked about. Right now, are they all cycling? Are they regularly showing signs of heat? Are we confident that they've been cycling since the start of the spring? Because those are the more fertile heifers, right? So the heifers that are at target weight, they've hit puberty on time, they've had multiple cycles before the breeding season comes along, they are the best candidates because they're highly fertile. And if you get a good fixed time AI protocol on them, then you're going to get better results. The heifers that are only just starting cycling now, they're not going to give you, no matter what you do, they're not going to give you really good conception rates compared to those other animals. So that's one thing. And then the other one is, that attention to detail bit. So there's the protocol is there. It lasts 8 days for heifers, and everything needs to be done exactly right. And the protocol has to be full compliance to get the best results. And if there's an injection timing that's off, a dose that's off, an administration missed, like these are all things that are going to decimate the fertility of that animal, or if it's all the animals, that entire herd. And you can see this. I mean, we've seen individual examples there on those slides of herds getting almost nothing pregnant to fixed time EI. And that is not, to me, that would indicate that there was a compliance issue, that there was something done wrong, and because of the thing that was done wrong, the fertility went to 0 for that herd. So compliance with the protocol is really critical. And just be aware that, these products change on a herd from year to year, so the dose might change, and if you give a half dose instead of a full dose, then you're not going to get the full effect. So it's really important to discuss all those with the vet when you're getting the drugs. Make out the schedule, what is the dose, make sure it's all done correctly.
Yeah, so Doreen, I suppose Stephen is obviously observing the data there, but we'll say you have the network of technicians maybe feeding back into you with information. A lot of thinking being done by technicians now. What are the kind of problems that they're encountering on the ground? We'll say that we may not be, quite often we're probably told that nothing went wrong or we did everything right, but that's what a person actually thinks they did. They genuinely do think that, but they actually don't realise that they maybe have done something wrong. Like, do technicians, by their nature, by the work that they're doing, they know whether an animal is right or not, generally speaking?
They do, and I think the big thing with fixed time AI is we're all looking to get 90% of the herd calved in the 6 weeks. And so what we need to do is 70% of the current herd you have to keep them for next year for the first 6 weeks, and then to get your heifers 18 to 20% replacement, ideally calved in the first month. And the big thing that fixed time AI does, it gives us 2 opportunities of breeding the animals. If you breed them the 1st of May, the repeats will be around between the 18th and the 23rd or so. So that is the big advantage of the fixed time. Of course, a lot of things can go wrong with it, but we're now here the 1st of April, so a lot of us won't be breeding until the next 30 days. So if our heifers are underweight, we could put up another 30 to 45 kilos in those heifers between here and then. And sometimes the heifers get forgotten about, because the dairy cows, the bulk tank is there every day, you know the volume collection every second day, you know the protein percent, you're watching it. We may not be watching the heifers as closely. So I mean, you could have a lot of inclement weather, so there's a lot we can do in the next 30 days. And then when you decide to start synchronizing the heifers, I think the big thing is talk to your vet, get the protocol right, understand the protocol, right? What can go wrong is not having enough help the day you're putting in the prids or seeders, not being clean, putting in the prids or seeders. When you're injecting them, try and get a dry day if you can, or put them in the shed for a couple of hours, so that they dry off. Use an 1.5 inch needle to make sure the GnRH is actually going into the muscle of the heifer. I mean, that is absolutely crucial. Then when you come along to remove the prid and seeder, if the prid and seeder you can't find it, don't assume she has lost it. As a lot of time technicians tell us they're finding prids and seeders when they're going inseminating heifers. So I mean, so put those heifers to one side. If you aren't competent in removing them yourself, call the vet. Okay. So it's all those little bits and pieces. And technicians, they, when they go out insemination, they have a fair idea on the heifers feeling right. And herd owners, they know they've got a poor response, so I mean, to the synchronization. But synchronization is not a panacea for poor management. Management has to be very good with it.
And I think that's your point, Stephen, in that the sync can actually bring the heifers bulling, but that the fertility is going to be quite poor if that's what it ends up doing. I think you described it on the video that we've done on synchrony that people can get on the Teagasc website from tomorrow, that it's not a band-aid. So should actually people be considering then doing, dare I say it, a small bit of pre-breeding on the heifers now if they're there or thereabouts only in terms of weight, and just making sure that they are cycling before they actually do go down the route of sinking, and maybe decide not to sink on that basis rather than on the, oh, it didn't work well last year type scenario, and kind of go back a few steps and try and figure out, is it something I've been doing wrong rather than that the drugs are wrong or that the program is wrong?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's an easy thing to do, right? Put a scratch card on today, 3 weeks later, it's still before the breeding season, and are they all marked up in 3 weeks? I mean, you'll even get a good answer in a week, or a third of them activated in a week. You'll have a good feel from that, and if they are, then you know that you can go forward and have an expectation that pre-breeding they're all cycling, and you should expect to get a good response.
Yeah, I think the big thing now, Stuart, we're here in the first week of April, is get the heifers out. If they're still inside, get them out. At least they'll be out 4 weeks before the breeding season, rather than putting them out 2 or 3 weeks. The other thing is weigh all your heifers now, right? And even if some of them are underweight, go ahead and breed them anyway, but at least weigh them, so when you look back to look at the success, which heifers, you'll know exactly, what it exactly is.
But I presume you mean go breed them anyway with a conventional straw, don't go using sex.
Oh yeah, but the important thing is not pull out if they're 30 or 40 kilos off what they should be. You will make it up during the summer.
Yeah.
You will make it up in the autumn. Don't delay the breeding them by 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Actually breed them now. And as Stephen says there, putting on a scratch card and even a crane at the end of it, and just watching, to see are they coming bulling, will give you a great indication. And now also we're just the first week of April. Some people have collars, which is great for heifers, but if you haven't the collar, it's not still too late to vasectomise a bull.
Okay.
As if you vasectomise him now, and wait 4 or 5 weeks, and let him bull a heifer a couple of times, to clean out whatever semen is left in the tubes. As a vasectomised bull really help with the heat detection of heifers. And sometimes heifers can be that bit difficult to pick up in heat.
Okay. So, Stephen, I suppose, can you address, can you address that up and down nature maybe from the slides you showed there? Why can somebody be getting it so right in 1 year and then get it so wrong in another year? Is that program related?
Well, okay, so we are trying to deal with a data set here now where we don't know all the details. We don't even know, in terms of the fixed time AI, we don't even know the exact protocol they use, right? We just know that they inseminated everything in a day. That's as much as we know about the fixed time AI aspect of it. But it's not terribly surprising, and it's probably consistent with the messages you're getting that I had good results last year and I have bad results this year. But there's, I just find it hard to believe that that's kind of, flick of the coin. Am I going to have good luck this year or bad luck this year? It's there's something more to this, and it's the heifers. Are they all at their maximum fertility level when the breeding season comes around? And then in terms of the breeding methods, is everything been done correctly, right? But there is a lot of herds that are consistently good, right? So maybe that's the ones we need to be focusing on, And unfortunately, there's also herds that are also in that bottom quartile all the time as well, right? So there is consistency, but to me, there's a positive message there that if it's poor, you can improve it, and you can improve it within a year. And there's calves born right now. They're whatever, they're going to be 2-3 months old at this point, and they need to be managed through this summer, through to housing, through the winter, to have maximize their chance for next year's breeding season. So it doesn't happen just at the end of April. There's a full year of work goes into getting those heifers at that weight.
Yeah, you can't solve the problem in 3 or 4 weeks. You can make up a bit of the difference, but you can't solve the problem.
And it's kind of avoiding pneumonia in calves, avoiding scouring the heifer calves. Getting them out, getting on the weight gains in the first summer, getting on the weight gains in the first winter. But still, we're 30 days off. So a case of getting them out, get them weighed, put on the scratch cards on them, whatever vaccinations that need to be done, get them in there now. So there's a lot we can do in the next 30 days to stack the odds with us for those efforts.
Okay. So thanks, Stephen and Doreen. Can I just remind people that there are questions? You can submit your questions on the Q&A tab. So what does synchronization and being ready for the breeding season look like even before it starts? Kieran Condon has an average 6-week calving rate of 90% over the last 5 years. We're going to talk to Kieran about how he is achieving this in a moment, but first we have a short video to give you an idea of the farming system that Kieran and his parents are running on their farm in Kilkenny.
My name is Kieran Condon. I'm here in Kells, County Kilkenny. I'm farming in partnership with my parents. We're milking 130 cows. We have 45 hectares of a milking platform stocked at three livestock units a hectare. We were a British Frisian herd before, so we've, over the last 10 or so years, we've changed to a more high EBI Holstein Frisian. Last year to Co-op we sent 527 kilos of milk solids at 4.51 butter fat and 3.7 protein. 5 years ago we were doing maybe 490, 480 solids, so we're up around 50 kilos. We aim to start breeding around the 25th of April to start calving around the 25th of January. Compact here is very important. We have dry ground, so we want to get cows out the grass very quickly. Last year, say, we had an 8-week breeding season. Bit higher than expected, empty rates of 14%, but we started calving the 20th of January and finished on St. Patrick's Day, so it was great to have them all finished so early. We're a 100% AI here on the farm for everything cows and heifers. So for selection for Frisian straws, we go through milk recording results, and we also look at the milk makeup on the EBI. So we want to make sure they have high percentages, high kilos of solids and low litres. We got rid of the stock about 5-6 years ago, as soon as we got the collars, and we just find it's a way better, it's just a simple system. There has been a big improvement on EBI on the farm. We were slightly below average for EBI maybe 6-7 years ago, and now we're top 10% for EBI at the moment. Look, farming is great. You're outside the whole time. Look, it has its challenges with the weather, like this spring, it can be very challenging, but when you're breeding and you're seeing the genetic gain of a herd, and just from day to day, it's really great to see how you're moving the farm forward.
So Kieran, a nice overview of your farming operation there. You have excellent figures, as you've outlined in the video. You've always had a good 6-week calving rate, but this has really ramped up in the last 5 or 6 years. So what would you actually attribute that to, Kieran?
So back in 2020 we got the collars put on. So they're a great help for both after calving. We're able to see any cows that are off farm, so we can get them treated early, either subclinical milk fever, so we can get them treated early. And then also any cows that don't come cycling, we're able to, we can get the reports on them, and then 10 days or so before breeding, we get all them scanned and get them treated accordingly.
Okay, so it's basically the improvement is that the pre-breeding work that I suppose people are fatigued after calving or through calving, they struggle to keep note of what's actually cycling, not cycling, etc. And then the follow-up is drifting into the breeding season, but you've managed to pull all that back.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so just explain, just walk us through what you'll be doing then over the next couple of weeks. So you're finished calving, as you said in the video there. I suppose maybe first, because people might be interested, slightly higher empty rate this year. Just give us an explanation for like what would you normally expect in terms of your empty rate?
We'd expect usually roughly 10% in 9 weeks. So we pulled the breeding season from the front end, say this year. So we started a week later but finished on the same date. So we just attribute that to the higher empty rate. But look, still 14% for 8 weeks. We're still happy enough with it.
Okay, very good. And in terms of what you'll be doing then for the next couple of weeks, in terms of you'll be starting your AI season around the 25th of April, probably like a lot of people. What are you going to do between here and then? Doreen has been talking about things that people can do. What are you doing for your herd?
So the plan is Monday week is to get the vet in, and any cows that are either anestrus or irregular heats, get all them scanned. And we'll probably also get scanned, even if cows are bulling, anything that had a hard calving or got milk fever, just to make sure they're all okay as well.
So you're checking animals that you know have had problems, even if they've already shown, just to purely make sure that they are functioning correctly.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. And we'll say, will most of those, what kind of treatments are being used there, or does it vary?
It's varying from each. Some cows need programs, others just, shot of estimate or whatever they want.
Okay, okay. And your objective then is to have most of those cows either are bred basically in the first week of breeding potentially?
That's the plan. So any cows that are put on a program will be bred on day 1 of breeding. So they have the highest chance then of going back and calf.
And obviously your PG shots then, they're going to come back in maybe week 2 or whatever.
Exactly,
they should be. And are you following up with that then? So some of those, sometimes the shot of PG may not actually do something for them. Is the vet coming back and looking at them again? Or we'll say they might come cycling to the shot and then they may not come cycling in the first 3 weeks when you're expecting them to. So are you following up again with a vet visit then?
Yeah, so any problem cows, we'll get a second vet visit, but most of the time, 90% of the time you don't need to.
Okay.
But only maybe the odd cow you will.
Okay. So look, an important point for people to be aware of, and I'm just going to ask you the question: what number of heifers do you need for your own herd? So for the 130 cows, what would you need for your own farm?
If we had 35 heifers, say, going for breeding by the end of April, we'd be happy.
Okay. And what numbers do you actually lend? So how many heifer calves have you for this year, for example?
Say we have 50 heifers on the ground this year.
Okay.
So we always aim to breed more. So if we have to, it's more if we get bad conception rates or weather-wise or anything, sex semen and all that. So dependent on it, if we get bad conception rates one year, we have a safety buffer there. So then any surplus heifers can be sold. They're still good stock, but it just allows us bring through the highest genetic potential animals into the herd.
So you kind of build in a buffer into your straw purchasing then.
Yeah.
So you're buying your sex straws and you're buying some conventional dairy as well, but you'll always lend 35 heifers on the ground no matter what, effectively, unless barring a complete disaster altogether. Like.
Yeah, I think I worked it out, and I'd have to get something like 35% conception to sexed and a bad conception to conventional to be under that. So yeah, we're very confident.
So now that you mentioned the conception rate, like you had 85% first service conception with sexed in your heifers last year and 88% your conventional. What do you attribute those figures to?
Well, look, it starts from day one. It starts from when they're born, getting the colostrum, and just it's all about keeping on top of them the whole way up along as well. You want to, all through the first summer, maybe once every 6 weeks, they're weighed, made sure their worm burden is all okay, and that's the whole way through to housing. And then a housing, they can be divided up and fed adequately if they're behind or ahead of target. So the aim is that they go out on grass the middle to the end of February at roughly 330 to 340 kilos. So they're well ahead of target then for breeding.
Okay, so I'll get Doreen to comment on it there in a minute now, but basically you're doing a lot of what we're talking about, and right from the get-go you're following through those heifers the whole way through their first year, and that's contributing to them achieving the weights that Stephen is talking about then, and that's delivering for you in terms of the conception rates. Now I suppose just to clarify for people, you actually have collars on your heifers as well, so you're not using any programs at all here, you're all natural service.
Yeah. And
breeding on observation after collars, obviously.
Yeah, heifers come home to the milking platform for the breeding season. They're home for 6 weeks, yeah.
Okay. I suppose, as I said in the introduction there, you're averaging 90% 6-week calving rate. Your 2025 calving rate was 94%.
Yeah.
Like when we talk about that at groups, we often get met with the kind of a slight resistance to the idea of having to deal with that number of calvings in a short period of time. Obviously 90% is our industry target, and there are people achieving it, obviously, or you wouldn't be here in front of us. But how are you preparing then, I suppose? Like, I mean, you have to be ready for that, I presume. It's like a tsunami of calves coming at you. Like, there's a lot to be done in a short space of time. Explain how you get ready for it, and why do you keep doing it, I suppose?
Well, you keep doing it because we're finished calving already, so it's great. Like, when the spring work comes, you're straight. You can be out in the fields. You're not in the sheds watching cows calving. So how we prepare, everything has to be ready. So this year we start calving roughly the 20th of January. So the first week of January, everything's ready. Straws in the pens, calving shed ready. The calf shed is ready. The infras, everything's set up. All the feeders are set up. So as soon as they hit the ground, we're not chasing our tail. We're not going back doing jobs we should have done already. Yeah. So we're already ahead on that. So
literally, and I'll come to you then, Doreen, there, but you're concentrating on the jobs that you need to do at that stage, which is the colostrum into the calf, which is contributing to the pneumonia, Doreen, that you're talking about a second ago, and all the knock-on effects down along through the lifetime of those animals. Yes. So it's creating its own success story, effectively.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's some questions coming in there, but Doreen, just how, from your perspective, the level of management from the day the calf hits the ground right through, like, is that below par in general? Because like we have some advisors in the northern half of the country that have looked at big numbers across areas up there that are finding maybe 50 to 55% of heifers off target late in we'll say in August, September time. Like, they haven't obviously got a great run at like they're coming out of the best part of the year now and they're behind target already. Like, do we need to really up our game in that area?
We do, because there are a couple of things we can do now at this time is look at the 2026 heifer calves. So I mean, how they're doing. And the big thing is with those 2026 heifer calves, we're the 1st of April now. So the oldest of them are going to be 8 weeks. So I mean, with the February, March. And the youngest of them, I mean, are going to be 2 to 4 weeks. So the biggest thing is try and get those gaining at least 0.7, 0.8 kilos a day. If you're down at 0.4, 0.5, 0.6, you're in difficulty. And it's easy enough to weigh calves. So even just to weigh the calves now, what daily live weight gain have you been getting in those calves? I mean, have they been getting enough milk replacer? Have they enough water? I mean, have they fresh straw and hay? Right? And the weaning then, the huge thing with the weaning is what we need to do with that is not what age you wean at, but it's how you wean. So at least wait until, especially our replacement heifers, at least 10 weeks, but definitely 8 before we start weaning. And before we start weaning, try and have them eating 1 kilo a day of concentrates. And that's 1 kilo for 3 consecutive days for every animals in the group. And the key with weaning then is to wean over 2 to 3 weeks, not to wean abruptly. And they come into weaning that they're eating 1.5 kilos, so I mean over 3 days. Because the big thing at the moment is to do a proper weaning, because that'll really help. So I mean, with the adjustment when they go to grass and so forth, and then right through the summer to keep that weight growing. And what Kieran is doing here is weaning every 6 weeks at grass, taking dung samples. He's monitoring the heifers, so he's staying on top of them the whole time. And with Kieran at the moment, it's like poetry in motion. Like if you have 94% of cows calved, you have a nice bunch of heifers.
Yeah, because they're coming early.
And if you look at Kieran there, I mean, with 94% of the cows calved, so I mean, in 6 weeks they're all, so I mean, calved well ahead of Patrick's Day.
Yeah. Okay, so Stephen, a question that I'll throw to you there from Tom. What's the view on feeding pre-breeding minerals to heifers that are at grass only? So you have a good bit of work done in that area down through the years.
So depending on where you are in the country, lots of grass is deficient in one or more minerals. The main ones that are at risk would be phosphorus, which you have to provide in large quantities, macro mineral, and then in the trace minerals, copper, selenium, and iodine. So, you know, like all farmers should be periodically auditing the grass that the animals are consuming and getting a sense of how close is this to meeting the animal requirements. Is there deficiencies in the grass that they're eating? And if you know the grass is not meeting all the requirements, then you have to supplement. And there's lots of ways to do it. It could be boluses, depending on the minerals. It could be in the water, or it could be in a small amount of meal. But if you don't give it, these animals over time are going to become initially subclinical deficient, nothing apparently wrong, but it's not helping their growth, it's not helping their figures in terms of daily live weight gain, and it's not going to help their fertility. And eventually they'll become clinical deficient, and it gets worse, like it'll get even slower, right? So now they're prone to parasites and other problems, right? So of course you should, but I can't tell you what it should be because it'll be specific to an individual farm.
Yeah, so every farm should be looking at the mineral status of their heifers anyway, and considering giving some cover.
Yeah, so you could easily blood sample a few heifers and see are they where they should be? Is there signs that it's off? But it's also important to think about the grass. Like the grass now for these heifers is going to be 90% of their diet for the summer. And what are they eating? What are they actually eating? And if this grass is really low in iodine, you have to get iodine into them. If it's low in copper, you have to get copper into them. And that's not going to be true for every grass sample that comes in, but it's going to be true for a lot of them.
And could that be one of the contributing factors? Now, obviously, we won't allow for the up and down maybe of heifers, but is that possibly some of the contributory factors for poor conception?
Yeah, it certainly can be, yeah. So, I mean, like mineral deficiency in general, like there's a few of them have very specific symptoms that are related to individual minerals. This is, symptoms that are caused by specific minerals, but you have a lot of them that are just a general sign of poor thrive, lethargic, poor intake, poor growth rate, and poor fertility. And poor fertility is made up of poor submission, irregular cycles, poor conception, but even that doesn't tell you that it's a particular mineral. You still need to go and do the investigation to find out which mineral, or in some cases, which minerals are causing that problem.
Okay, so we might just keep on that trend there for a second. So does the co-secure bolus, and maybe we'll just cover that as being all those boluses are generally, a lot of them have the same minerals in them, have enough minerals for heifers? So does it come back to what the problem is?
It comes back to, well, copper, I mean, that mineral, that bolus contains 4 minerals, copper, selenium, cobalt, and iodine, co-secure. Yeah. Well, there's a version with and without iodine. But they contain those 4 minerals, and they will cover requirements. It says on the back of the box for 6 months. I would question whether that iodine is really hanging around for a full 6 months, because it seems like it's a huge release at the start, at least for some of the different boluses that are out there. But for sure, you're going to get 3 months coverage, enough to provide the requirements for heifers.
And interestingly enough, we had a case a couple of years ago, and with dairy cows now, where farmers' blood levels were very poor for, well, the farmers' cows' blood levels were very poor for minerals, and he was using some of the boluses. I don't even know the make of the bolus that he was using, and even though he tested during that period, and even though the blood levels were still quite low, the bolus was actually contributing to getting the levels up good enough to get him over the hump in terms of his fertility improved, even though his actual mineral status was still below par, I suppose.
And a blood sample, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so if the animals are deficient though, like some of that will be taken up and it'll be used to replenish stores in the body, so you might not necessarily see it being available in the blood.
Okay.
But also, like some minerals, then there's antagonists in the rumen, so maybe it's you're giving a bolus, but maybe it's not all getting into the bloodstream either, right? So it depends on the specific minerals. But if you're seeing the phenotype improving, you're getting an improvement in fertility, then certainly some of it was getting through.
Okay, very good. So, long story short, with minerals, people need to check it out for their own locality, etc. But there is benefit.
Well, every year people worry about minerals when animals start repeating, and it's much better to worry about it before the breeding season begins. Like, take the proactive action. Worry about it now. You have time to. Most farms are into the second rotation now, and now is a great time to look at the mineral value of the grass that you're growing, because it's going to be reflective of the rest of the grazing season. So I'd worry about it now and not defer that worry until repeats start happening.
Yeah, and this has triggered another question: the injections for minerals versus the boluses versus other options.
Yeah, so the injectable, there's the multi-min option out there, which I think if there is a deficiency, that's your quickest route to get mineral into the animals. It's just the quantity is so small. I mean, the quantity, it's the quickest route to address an immediate problem right now, because you're giving it straight into the bloodstream, it's straight into the animal, you're bypassing the rumen where a lot of antagonists exist. But you'd need to come up with, at the same time, a strategy to get it into their diet, right? So to eliminate the deficiency, injecting into the animal is the quickest route, but you at the same time need to come up with a dietary strategy to also get it in.
Okay, so Kieran, there seems to be a good bit of interest in the way you're running your system, obviously. So first is coming back to Doreen's point about the transition from milk and so forth. So interested in Kieran's step down off of milk and transition to grass for his R1s. What age is level of concentrate post-weaning period most important?
So they go to once a day at 8 weeks, so at 56 days old they're gone to once a day. And then by 70 days we have them completely off milk. So they go on once a day, they go to 4 for all feeding, for all the first 8 weeks they're on 8 litres a day, 4 and 4. So then when they go back to once a day it's 4 for the first few days, and then 3, and we're stepped down a litre every 3 days.
Okay. And then we'll say they're obviously eating high levels of concentrate.
High levels, yeah, they're easily
maybe not a lot when they're on the 8 litres, but as you drop off the milk,
easily eating a kilo and a half at weaning.
And when they're out at grass, then do you feed them for a period, or
kilo and a half all year long?
All year long, okay.
Until September at least.
Yeah, okay. Very good. So one of the other questions then coming in is, how soon are you putting the collars on the heifers?
They're not on them yet, but they'll be on them next week. So you aim to have them on kind of 3 weeks before breeding.
Just to get that window.
Just to have the whole window captured in it, yeah.
Okay. And then the other question that was again relating to the collars is, what type of collars are you using, and at what hour on the collars do you AI with the sex straws? So obviously that's probably specific maybe to the actual collar that you're using. They mightn't all be running on the same algorithms. Maybe that's something you can answer a little bit better, maybe Doreen, possibly. But I'll let you the type of collars that you're using and the hour that you are watching for the serve.
So it's sense hub collars, and a window comes up on it. So if they're in the window for sex, they get the sex straw. If they're down for sex, and if they're not, they get the conventional straw.
Okay. So Doreen, is there a major, like I know I've heard you saying before about the timing of the serve is important, obviously, and I think it was probably more an issue with drafting gates in terms of when they were drafting, you were talking about before, but drafted at the wrong time, drafted too early, drafted too late, all contributes to poor conception as well. So the windows that, like, what's the situation with are they what people should be watching, I suppose, if they have collars for and they're using their sext and they're using their conventional straws?
I think the big thing with sext, as Stephen says, I mean, the conception rate is going to be 5 to 6 to 7% lower than conventional. So we need everything right for the sext. And we also need to give the sex to cows who want replacement on, which is our youngest cows that are calved the longest, right? And we have to make sure that actually have, a good heat. And with sexed, we don't inseminate fresh cows with sexed. We inseminate them, in the heat and up to 12 hours later.
Yeah.
So if your technician is coming in every morning, at 9 o'clock to inseminate the cows, and he's just coming once a day, is any fresh cows, give them conventional, and any of the cows that's on since the evening before, give them sexed.
Okay, and actually on that same note then again, Cormac has asked the question with regards to sex draws, what is the timing for thawing and getting it into the cow? So that window, I think Stephen, you mentioned that there's, we'll say the protocol around sex is obviously that little bit more unforgiving compared to conventional. So the time frame for getting it thawed, how long should it be thawed, and how quickly then does it have to get from the flask into the cow?
Okay, so out there we've farmers that are using technicians, and we have farmers that are in DIY. And with farmers that are using technicians at the moment, technicians are getting geared up with all their equipment, getting it cleaned, getting their semen sorted. So for DIY herd owners, the big thing at the moment for them is to get their equipment cleaned with their thawing flask, get it descaled, clean all their equipment, and then make sure that they actually have an accurate thermometer. And what we're talking about for sex is 35 degrees for 45 seconds. Right, and try and get it into the cow within 5 minutes. Okay. If you're very frosty mornings, you really need to protect the gun until you're inseminating. Hopefully in a month's time when we're inseminating, we'll be up around 20 degrees. Yeah. Well, but the big thing is we need to protect the gun. But for DIY guys at the moment is to get their equipment right, get their thawing kit cleared, cleaned, get their semen into the tanks, and get themselves organised.
Okay, so I'll just come back to you, Kieran, actually, because there's a question I meant to ask you. Stephen mentioned about that team of bulls. You use a good big dairy team, but you also use a good team of beef bulls as well. So just give us what are your criteria for picking the beef bulls, and like what are you trying to deliver in terms of those beef bulls?
So criteria, we're picking high CBV value bulls. So we want them easy calving, and we want a high carcass weight as well. So we want a really sellable calf. What's the criteria? And we pick two bulls of each breed, just so when you're picking bulls like Charolais or Blues or Limousines, you have a risk that they're going to be hard calving. So like the Frisians, you don't want to put all your eggs into one basket. So we try and pick 2 bulls of each breed then as well.
Okay, very good. There's a very good question after coming in there that I think it's important to pick up on from Adrian. There, he says that he would like to sink heifers on an out farm to reduce labour and use sex semen, but he's worried that the bull won't handle the repeats coming all together. So if I have to go AI again, does it undo the labour efficiency as need to add scratch cards, then check them for a few days? We'll be breeding 50 heifers in this example. So it's something that we had talked about before we started, that it was an important point to make. It is probably key that if you do those fixed time AI protocols, that you do AI the second round of repeats, really, isn't it? In most cases, anyway.
Yeah, but sure, there's an opportunity there, right? So you've fixed time AI, you're doing most of the work before the breeding season begins, and they're bred on mating start date. So a day or 2 days later, you can introduce the bull, and then at some date when, like, estrus cycle's 18-24 days, the average heifer it's going to repeat is going to be on day 21. So for a few days, somewhere around the middle, days 18, 19, 20, 21, you're going to have to go back and do a bit of heat detection and get those animals bred to AI. So at that point, you're probably switched over to conventional, so the timing becomes that little bit less, you're a little bit less stringent. But it does reduce your bull power requirement. I mean, after the first AI and the repeats, you should be over 80% pregnant. I mean, like your bull requirement for those remaining heifers is going to be fairly modest. And if you don't have that, and all these repeats come together, like how are you going to fare in terms of bull power? And if you don't have the bull power, then there's not going to be enough of these heifers going calf to the repeat heat, and that messes out their calving pattern then the following spring. Okay. So it's worth it for the few days.
And I suppose as well, just want to pick up on something as well, Stephen, that we'll say, when you say about everything being bred on day 1, and Doreen mentioned then that you have them bred again on day 21, even though you're showing figures that are lower, and you said that these fixed time protocols will be slightly poorer, overall pregnancy rate in that 21-day period is higher with the fixed time AI. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah. I mean, like, farmers should be really concerned about their calving pattern, right? And like the absolute figure for pregnancy to AI, of course it matters. You're investing the money in the sex draw and the fixed time AI to facilitate that, so the number does matter. But the more important thing is, what is this going to do to the calving pattern for that group of heifers? So you get a certain hit on day 1, whatever's going to repeat is repeating on average by day 21. You're back to conventional, so you're back to whatever your normal conception rate is there. And this is now a group of animals that are all pregnant in the first 3 weeks. They're all calving. Their due date is in the first 3 weeks of the calving period the following year. And that's going to be beneficial to them as cows in preparation for their own breeding season as a parity 1 cow. Those are all benefits. They have more days in milk. So you know, when we think about fixed time AI, we should be thinking about the portion pregnant to 21 days rather than just simply looking at the day 1 pregnancy in isolation. You know, submission is part of it, and you get 100% submission on day 1. If you take a small depression in conception, but add in the repeat heats 21 days later, you're always going to be ahead with fixed time AI.
Yeah, the big thing there, Stuart, if you take that guy with the 50 heifers, like if he gets 60% conception rate to fixed time AI, he's 20 heifers to repeat.
Yeah.
If he gets 70, he's 15. If he's 80, he gets 10. So whatever way he twists and turns it, he's about 10 to 20 heifers to pick up, right? And his best option is put on scratch cards and a crane. I mean, he could put that on in 1 day. And if he could put that on in day 15, 16 or 17, whatever day suits him, that'll definitely get him over the next week, which will cover the 18 to 24 days when the heifer's in heat. And it's definitely really worthwhile doing it. Now, depending on his bull, if the bull is a virgin bull, right, he probably has never mated before, and having 10 or 15 or 20 heifers come at him, he's not going to get very few in calf. If it's a mature bull, it's still too many, coming at him in the 1 day.
Yeah.
So whatever way he goes to work, he needs to do the scratch cards, he needs to go in with the cranes.
And is it nearly the same with PG protocols as well, Stephen, in terms of obviously the numbers that are bred over the 7 days are coming slow and steady, but that surge that comes on in or around day 10 is going to be overwhelming for a bull as well?
Yeah, but it is going to be more spread out though. It is more spread out because you've been breeding for a week, so they're on their own repeat schedule, whatever repeats there, and then the PG is that's spread out over 2 or 3 days as well. So when you add in the 18 to 24 day spread around that, it is more spread out. I think for the most part, farmers that are doing PG, they're not looking for that repeat heat because it's 21 days after day 10.
Yeah.
You're on to day 31 of the breeding season. They're not really looking for it.
Okay, so I've been ignoring a question here from Jerry on and off, or with other questions coming in. Non-cycling cows scanned and seeders put on a seeder program. If they're not showing a heat at the end of the program, is there any point in putting a straw into them?
Yeah. So. That's a question for me, is it?
Either of you can take it. Yeah.
Well, my take on this is that you're taking this group of cows and you're synchronizing them to get them going, and you're going to get some of them in calf. For a lot of these animals, it is likely their first post-calving heat event, which is often silent. So the fact that they're not showing heat is part of the physiology of the cow that's currently anestrus. So if the protocol works, it's going to force an ovulation. So you should be putting semen in there, but this is obviously going to be, you're not putting the most valuable semen in your tank into that cow. So you're hoping for a pregnancy, and it should be a beef straw, and you're hoping for the best. But if she doesn't, and you do force an ovulation, but she doesn't conceive, that animal is going to repeat somewhere within the next 3 weeks as well. Okay. So part of the rationale here is to just get them going. You're going to get some pregnant, and the follow-up repeat heat, you're going to get more again.
Okay, so
but with those cows, Stuart, now is a good time to start, because we are the 1st of April. We won't be bulling for the extra 30 days. Right, so go through the cows in the parlour, pull out the thin cows. You know what I mean? The cows that are thin at the moment, cows that are calves since Patrick's Day, cows you're going to keep next year. You know what I mean? If you're not keeping them, there's no point. Put them in once a day milking. Put a tape in their tails. You know what I mean? If we're still in at night, you know what I mean, milk them in the evening, so they're going in with empty bags into the cubicles. You know what I mean? They won't be leaking. Put them in once a day, and that cow then, when you put in your on the program, the fact that she's had 30 days on once a day, she'll respond much better to synchronization. Okay. So start now rather than thinking, do you know what I mean?
Okay, so we're running out of time, and there's something again that we need to cover, I suppose. Very good question from James. Question on the risk of using sext with zinc, and we're heading into blue tongue weather at the same time. Doreen, I'll throw that one at you.
Yeah. Blue tongue weather, there aren't many midges out there at the moment, you know what I mean? So the question is, when is the mid-season? It's from May to November. Do you know what I mean? And what we'll have to have is at least 3 days over 12 degrees. Do you know what I mean? So it could be June, July and August. But the big thing is getting our vaccines now for blue tongue. Because one thing blue tongue really hits is fertility. Because we end up with early embryonic deaths. Mid-season we can end up with late abortions. And then the worst bit about blue tongue is around the time of calving, if it hits late enough in the season, what you end up with is late abortions, premature births and these dummy calves. So the fact we're so compact in Ireland and that our breeding season coincides so much with the mid-season, our early, mid and late pregnancies, you know what I mean, I think we just have to vaccinate. Because we do not know, is it 26 or is it 27 that's going to be the big year in blue tongue? But I think the big thing is, so I mean, we need to go in and vaccinate and do it now.
Okay, and is there anything in terms of lepto or BVD or other diseases, IBR, even that people maybe have taken their eye off the ball of in the last couple of years? Do they need to be conscious of all of those that they could all, obviously blue tongue is very real risk in 2026 and maybe in 2027 as well, but like other vaccinations that maybe have been done in the past, people just need to be aware of all of them and that they can all contribute to poor fertility.
Oh, especially, you know what I mean, lepto and the fact you're milking cows even to protect your own health. I think every dairy farmer should be vaccinating. IBR, you know what I mean, it depends on the herd. And then there are pockets of BVD out there causing problems.
Yeah.
So your vet in the practice will know, you know what I mean, what areas are hit at the moment.
Okay, so look, we're going to have to wrap it up with that, but actually one quick question that's in there for you, Kieran. How confident are you with the collars in terms of picking up the heats in the cows, or in the heifer, sorry?
I put 100% confidence in them. We do no tail paint, we don't observe them ourselves or anything. We have them on 5 years, yeah, I have 100% confidence in them.
Okay, and in fairness, your figures actually show the testament to that. And actually just another one then on the sink there, Stephen, as well. Is it possible to sink late calving cows within 3 weeks of calving? And I will point to people that we have done a video on that will be out tomorrow that people should look at if they're interested in, because it's a very comprehensive run through of all the programs available. But is it possible to sink within 3 weeks of calving?
It's kind of a waste of money, and you might be doing more harm than good. I mean, the back of the pack of most of those progesterone devices would be saying to wait until cows at least 35 days calved. In some of the research we've done, we've put it in cows that are 32 days calved. So 32 days calved, you start, it's a 10-day protocol, which is bred on day 42. So that's kind of as early as you would go. And there is a reason for that, in that if you were introducing an early ovulation with that first injection of GnRH and you're causing an increase in progesterone in cows that have not yet had an opportunity to involute fully, you could be causing problems with uterine infection and allowing an infection to fester. So you can go through the fixed time AI protocol and you can inseminate the animal at the end, but for some of those cows the chance of success is pretty close to nil. So you're better off to allow that cow the time that they need to clean the uterus, and the earliest we would go in with that protocol would be 32 days after calving to start it.
Okay, so just to reiterate your point, Doreen, before I'll ask you for your kind of take-home messages, is the person has put in here, anyone using electric flasks should check them and make sure the temperature is correct. Mine was 10 degrees off last year when I checked it with a normal thermometer. So that's your point about being prepared, and if you're doing your own AI, to be ahead of the game in terms of being organised for that. So look, we've run out of time, loads of questions coming in there, and thank you to everyone for all the questions that they have put in there. And as I said, I'll reference you to the Teagasc website. There's a good resource there around the zinc protocols and other bits and pieces around heifer weights and the pre-breeding and so forth. Kieran, just one last point from you in terms of what's your recommendation to people today? Is the 1st of April, what should they get done between here and we'll give them till the 1st of May?
Definitely scan the problem cows. Anything that hasn't come bulling, that's over 4 weeks calved, 5 weeks calved even, scan them. Anything that had a difficult calving, scan them as well. They're the cows that'll probably calve late next year if you don't start them now.
Okay, very good. Doreen?
There are a couple of things, and Stephen's point there, I think one thing, Stuart, we have to eliminate from the dairy herds difficult calvings. I mean, while we're trying to drive on the dairy beef, and now there's superb work being done in the dairy beef, and look at the number of calvings that's actually there, and use a different bull in your maidens than in your second calvers and on your mature cows.
So you're saying use a team of bulls there basically to minimise the risk of calving difficulty, which will help with the subsequent fertility then?
It is, and when you look at the lists and the ICBF active list, you could have some bulls there with 40,000 calvings and more bulls with no calvings. So just look at that, especially if you've had some difficulty this year. The big thing, I suppose, Stuart, is with the 1st of April now, what can we do? I mean, weigh the heifers, put scratch cards on them, get whatever vaccinations into them. The cows, put the 10 ones on once a day. I think that's the biggest thing we can do. And do out a plan for the breeding season. I mean, what you do each day, and 3 weeks in, where have you? How many cows have I bred? And get out your vet the cows that you haven't yet bred.
So ICBF weekly fertility reports basically to identify cows that aren't after being bred and follow up on them immediately.
Absolutely, crucial piece.
Okay, and Stephen, if there's anything left to be said there after Doreen?
Well, just on the heifers in general, like Doreen said, getting them going now, you've got 30 days for those, but for next year's crop you've got 12 months ahead, so you know, you've a lot of time for those animals. But for the herds that are thinking about doing fixed time AI, you know, the compliance with the protocol is really critical. Just make sure you've got all that worked out and you know exactly what to do on what day. Maybe be picky on the day of AI, so if they haven't shown signs of heat, maybe they're not candidates for sex semen. So if you're getting a poor response, something's gone wrong somewhere, and be picky in that regard. And then if you do fixed time AI, 3 weeks later, plan on doing scratch cards and AI for the few days, because just, you know, the bull team available will be overwhelmed by the repeats if the initial conception goes poorly.
Okay, so thank you, Stephen, Doreen and Kieran, for joining me and sharing your knowledge and insights and experience with us. An important point raised this evening is to go after those potential problem cows or late calving cows in the next few weeks ahead of the breeding season, so that when you do get to the start of the breeding season, you have as many cows as possible ready for breeding at the start date. Following that approach that Kieran has outlined tonight, the effort that he's putting in before breeding is paying off for him, with excellent 6-week calving rates that are lending to long lactations and excellent output from his farm. He's also driving his milk output through herd maturity, through fertility, days in milk and long lactations, rather than selecting for high milk kilos in his bull selections, which is a more sustainable way of increasing output for all farms. For more information on all things related to dairy breeding, please visit the Teagasc website at www.teagasc.ie. Before I finish, I would like to thank the Teagasc Dairy Specialist team and the Teagasc Dairy Advisors who have contributed to tonight and other aspects of Breeding Week this week, and of course a big thanks to our production team of Declan McArdle and Charlie Smith, without whom there would be no broadcast. So thank you very much for tuning in tonight, and we wish you the very best with your breeding season ahead, and a happy Easter to you all.